I went out with my ex as friends. That was the sentence I kept repeating to myself like a shield, like if I said it enough times, it would magically turn the whole night into something harmless. It wasn't a secret relationship. It wasn't a hidden second life. It was just dinner, just talking, just catching up. At least, that's the story I built in my head. The real story started the second I walked into that hotel lobby and saw my husband sitting there with a suitcase at his feet and a room key in his hand. Because that was the moment my little harmless narrative died. The air inside the hotel was warm and too bright. I remember that detail because the outside air had been cold, sharp, and my cheeks were still stinging from it when the glass doors slid open. My ex, Daniel, was walking beside me, talking about some trip he had taken, and I was laughing louder than the story really deserved. We stepped onto the marble floor. I still felt that floating buzz you get when the evening went exactly the way you wanted. Inside jokes, long eye contact, shared memories, attention wrapped around you like a coat. I was mid-laugh when my eyes lifted from Daniel's face and drifted across the lobby. I froze. My laugh died so quickly it felt like someone had reached into my throat and switched it off. Because there he was, Ethan, my husband, sitting in one of those low lobby armchairs like he belonged there, one ankle resting on his knee, hands folded loosely in front of him. There was a suitcase standing upright next to his chair, handle up. A small white envelope, the kind they put room keys in, lay on the table beside him. He looked like a still frame from another movie that had been pasted inside my night. He didn't jump up when he saw us. He didn't look shocked. He just lifted his head and met my eyes, like he had been waiting for this exact moment. My feet stopped moving. Daniel took one more step before realizing I was no longer beside him, and turned back, confused. "Mia," he asked, "you okay?" I couldn't answer. It felt like the hotel ceiling had gotten lower, like the lights had gotten harsher, like everyone else in the lobby had silently agreed to stop existing, so there would only be the three of us. Ethan, me, and the man I was very carefully calling just a friend in my own head. Ethan stood up slowly, not dramatically, not with rage, just controlled. He smoothed the front of his jacket with one hand, picked up the suitcase handle with the other, and walked toward us. Every step felt like an echo in my chest. My mind sprinted through excuses at a speed my mouth could never match. He must have come here for work. This is a coincidence. Maybe he'll think we just bumped into each other. Maybe he hasn't seen anything yet. Then he reached us and looked from me to Daniel, then back to me. His eyes were calm. That's what scared me most. Not his voice, not his posture. His calm. "Perfect," he said quietly. "You're both here." Daniel shifted beside me, instinctively straightening his shoulders, like he had just been called into a meeting. Ethan lifted the envelope with the room key between two fingers and held it up. "Let's finish this conversation upstairs," he said. No hello. No, what is this? No raised tone. Just that sentence, like the rest of the script was already written. My throat went dry. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" I tried to ask lightly, but my voice came out thin and false. "Waiting," he answered. "For you, and for him." He didn't even say Daniel's name. Daniel cleared his throat. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he started. "We were just—" Ethan turned his gaze on him and the words died on Daniel's tongue. "You're coming too," Ethan said. "You were part of this, so you might as well hear it." Daniel looked at me, eyebrows raised, silently asking, "What is happening?" I opened my mouth, but nothing coherent came out. Every excuse I had carefully prepared in advance. "We're just friends. It was only dinner. I told you I was going out." Crumbled like paper. "Ethan, can we please talk alone?" I managed. "This is between you and me." "No," he said with that same terrifying calm. "If you could drag him into our marriage, you can explain everything in front of him." He pressed the elevator button. The light above it glowed. I felt like I was watching a car crash I had personally driven into a wall. If you heard only that lobby scene, you would probably think I had been sneaking around for months. I hadn't. That's what I keep telling myself. This was one night, one evening, one choice that I decided didn't need full honesty. It wasn't romantic, I said later to anyone who would listen. It wasn't like that. We just talked. It was just dinner. It's not like we did anything. I knew him before I met my husband. It's normal to keep in touch. Every sentence started with, "It was just," or "it's not like," as if morality was measured like a school grading system, and as long as you stayed above a certain line, you passed. And whenever someone asked, "But did your husband know every detail?" I went straight to my favorite shield. "He would have overreacted," I said. "That's why I didn't tell him everything." Which sounds reasonable until you admit what that sentence really means. I knew he would not be okay with it, so I decided to give myself permission anyway. Daniel's message arrived on a Wednesday at 11:14 in the morning. I was at work, halfway through a spreadsheet I didn't care about, starving and bored. My phone lit up. Daniel. "Hey, stranger. I'm in your city for 24 hours. Coffee?" I stared at the name first, not the text. Daniel. There was a time when that name meant butterflies and chaos and long late-night calls. We had dated years before I met Ethan. It had been intense, dramatic, always swinging between too close and too far. It had also been young and unfinished. When we broke up, we said all the usual things. It's for the best. We want different things. We're not ready. And then, like most people, we cut contact so we could pretend we were not secretly wondering about each other. Seeing his name again on my screen felt like an old song I had forgotten I knew all the lyrics to. My first instinct was excitement. My second was guilt. I looked around the office as if anyone could see my thoughts. Nobody cared. Everyone was staring at their own screens. I opened the message. Me. "Wow, it's been ages." He replied almost instantly. "Daniel, I know. Work trip, flying out tomorrow afternoon. Thought of you when the cab drove past that park where we once got lost." A little spark ran down my spine. We once got lost. He remembered that. We texted a little more. "Where are you staying? How long? What have you been up to?" He asked if I was free that evening. That was the moment when the choice appeared. Not, do I want to see him? That answer came fast. Yes. The real choice was, do I tell Ethan the full story, or do I call this meeting an old friend and trust myself? I chose the second one, very quickly, then decorated it with nice words. We're adults. People stay friends with exes. We will be in a public place. I love my husband. This is just catching up. And because I knew exactly how much honesty he would accept, I did the next thing. I deleted the message thread. Not because I had done anything wrong yet, because I knew I might. When I got home that evening, Ethan was in the kitchen. He had music on low, his sleeves rolled up, a chopping board in front of him. The apartment smelled like garlic and something else he had bought for dinner. "Hey," he said without turning around. "You're home early." "I left on time," I replied, putting my bag down. It just felt like a long day. He glanced over his shoulder with a little smile. "Long week," he said. "I was going to make pasta." On another night, I might have kissed his cheek, laughed, and joined him. That night, my mind was already on the clock. "I won't be here for dinner," I said, trying to sound casual. "I'm meeting someone." He paused in mid-slice. "Someone," he repeated. "An old classmate," I lied smoothly. "He's in town for one night. We thought we'd catch up." The word classmate slid out of my mouth easily. Not ex, not old flame. Classmate, neutral, boring, safe. Ethan finished cutting the vegetables before answering. "Who?" he asked. "You don't know him," I said too fast. He put the knife down. "Mia," he said quietly. "What's his name?" For 1 second, I considered telling him. Maybe if I say Daniel now, it won't look like I'm hiding anything. But then I pictured his face if he recognized the name. He knew about Daniel. Not every detail, but enough to know there had been a story. "Just an old friend," I said. "We knew each other before. It's not a big deal." He turned to look at me fully then. His eyes were calm. "Is it someone you used to date?" he asked. There it was. The line. I could have stepped away from it. I didn't. "That's not the point," I said, rolling my eyes. "We're adults. We're not 16. People stay in touch." "That's not an answer," he replied. I shrugged. "Why are you acting like this is something huge?" I said. "We're just having dinner. In public. I'm not disappearing into the night with a stranger." He watched me for a moment. "You're avoiding the question," he said. I felt irritation rise, sharp and hot. "I'm avoiding an argument," I said, "because I know how you get. If I tell you every tiny piece of information, you will turn it into some crisis." He lifted his hand slightly. "I just asked who it is," he said. "That's not turning it into a crisis. That's asking for the truth." "And I'm telling you it doesn't matter," I snapped. "If you trust me, it shouldn't matter." There it was, the card I always played when I wanted to shut something down. If you trust me. Ethan went quiet. He looked at me for a long second, like he was deciding something silently. "Fine," he said at last. "Go. Have your dinner with your old classmate." The way he said old classmate made it clear he didn't believe a word. "You're overreacting already," I muttered. He turned back to the chopping board. "I'm going to finish making dinner," he said. "If you come back in time, there'll be some left." That was it. No dramatic warning. No, "if you walk out that door." Just that. His calm bothered me more than an argument would have. If he had shouted, I would have felt justified in being angry. Instead, he stayed composed, so I told myself I had permission. I left the apartment in my not trying too hard outfit that I had actually spent 20 minutes choosing. Not the dress that would look like I was going on a date. Not the most casual jeans either. Something in between. When I got to the restaurant, Daniel was already there. He stood up when he saw me, a big grin spreading across his face. "Wow," he said, "you look exactly the same." I didn't, and neither did he. He had a little more grey in his hair, a little more definition in his jaw. He wore a shirt that fit well, sleeves rolled to his forearms. He hugged me like we were old friends. I let him. We sat down. At first, the conversation really was harmless. "How have you been? When did you move? How is your job?" He asked about Ethan. "So you're married now," he said, smiling. I saw the photos. "Yeah," I said. 2 years. "Happy?" he asked, a teasing edge in his tone. "Most of the time," I answered lightly. That was the first crack. It would have been easy to say, yes. It would have been true enough. But most of the time opened a door. Daniel's eyebrows lifted. "Only most?" he asked. I shrugged. "Life is not a movie," I said. "There are bills and routines and going to bed early because you both have work the next day." "So you miss the chaos," he said with a little smirk. "I miss feeling like something surprising could happen," I admitted. He smiled in that way he used to, tilting his head slightly. "With me," he said, "something surprising usually did." We both laughed. It felt like slipping back into an old jacket that still fit too well. We ordered wine. We told old stories. About that trip, where the hotel lost our reservation. About the night we stayed out so late we watched the sun come up from a bus stop. Every time we remembered something, we became more us and less two separate adults with new lives. I felt younger. I felt noticed. Back home, Ethan would be finishing dinner and probably rinsing the plates. He would maybe watch a series we had already started, then turn it off because he didn't want to get ahead of me. I thought of that and pushed the image away. "You're quiet," Daniel said at one point. "Just thinking," I replied. "About what?" he asked. "About how easy this feels," I said before I could stop myself. He rested his cheek on his hand and watched me. "It always did," he said. "We were just too young to not ruin it." We both laughed like that was a cute line. not a loaded statement. He asked if Ethan ever got jealous. I rolled my eyes. He doesn't like it when I control who I talk to, I said. He calls it transparency. I call it monitoring. Does he know you're here? He asked. He knows I'm out, I said, sipping my drink. That's enough. He looked at me for a moment. That sounds like a no, he said. I shrugged. If I told him, he'd make it weird, I said. This is easier. Daniel nodded slowly. So you lied, he said. He didn't say it with judgment, more like an observation. I adjusted the truth, I corrected. We laughed. My phone buzzed then. I glanced at the screen. Ethan, how's dinner? I flipped the phone over without replying. Work? Daniel asked. Something like that, I said. Dinner should have ended after the main course. That would have been reasonable. Instead, we ordered dessert, then extra drinks. The restaurant got louder as the evening went on. Couples, groups, a birthday at the other table, music in the background. We leaned closer to hear each other better. His shoulder brushed mine. My hand touched his arm when I laughed. Little things. Nothing that would qualify as proof in some strict rule book. Plenty that would qualify as trouble in real life. We started talking about what-ifs. He asked if I ever thought about the fact that if one small thing had gone differently, we might still be together. I said I didn't think about it often. That was a lie. He told me about his past few years. There were people he had dated, projects he'd started, one almost engagement that ended just before the ring. He asked about my life. I told him about the apartment, the routine, the careful plans Ethan and I had for later. He smiled a little sadly. You sound like someone who always does the sensible thing, he said. What's wrong with sensible? I asked, pretending to be offended. Nothing, he said. It's safe, stable, predictable. He let the word hang. Predictable. For a second, Ethan's face flashed in my mind, the same quiet expression, the same reliable presence. The way he always checked if I'd taken my umbrella. The way he always calculated the best route before we drove anywhere. It's better than the alternative, I said. Is it? Daniel asked, eyes on mine. I didn't answer. My phone buzzed again. Ethan. Everything okay? This time I didn't even flip it over. I just slid it back into my bag. I felt wild and justified and sure. I told myself this was the first spontaneous thing I'd done in months. We finally decided to leave when we noticed the staff glancing at the clock. Outside, the air hit my face like a cold hand. Daniel held the door open for me. So, he said, where to now? Taxi home. I hesitated. I didn't want the night to end, but I also knew going anywhere else would move the line, again. I told a friend I might meet her at the hotel bar around the corner, I said. She might still be there. That was not entirely true. I'd mentioned to a colleague earlier that there was a nice bar in this hotel. That was all. Daniel raised his eyebrows. One last drink? He asked. I nodded. We started walking. As we passed the restaurant window, I heard a whisper behind us. Two women were standing outside, waiting for a ride. One of them looked at me and tilted her head. Isn't she married? The other one said, too loudly to be completely private. I felt the words like a splash of cold water down my back. Daniel heard it too. He glanced at them, then at me. They might have seen your wedding ring, he said gently. I looked down at my hand. I had not taken it off. I am married, I said, trying to sound steady. Married people are allowed to walk outside at night. He nodded. Of course, he said, as long as everything is clear. That sentence lingered. As long as everything is clear. Ethan knows I'm out, I said quickly. I'm not sneaking out like some teenager. That's not what I meant, he said. I just don't want to be in the middle of something that feels grey. Nothing is grey, I said, a little too sharply. We're having a drink and then going home. That's all. He accepted that. I tried to make myself believe it too. By the time we reached the hotel, I had almost forgotten the women's whispers. The entrance was bright and polished. People moved through the space dragging suitcases, checking in, sitting at the bar. It was neutral territory. I told myself that, anyway. We stepped inside. Daniel was talking about some foolish thing he had done on his last trip, and I was laughing. Really laughing, the way you do when you are tired and a little unfocused and enjoying the feeling of being the most important person in someone's field of vision. I turned my head toward the bar. That was when my laugh died and the world narrowed. Ethan, sitting like a quiet answer to a question I hadn't admitted I was asking. The shock was so bright that for a second I thought I was imagining him, like my guilt had grown a face. Then he moved. Then he stood. Then he spoke. Perfect. You're both here. I felt my stomach drop. Everything after that felt like moving through thick water. The tone, the suitcase, the key, the sentence. Let's finish this conversation upstairs. Upstairs. Not, we're going home to talk. Not, we will discuss this tomorrow. Upstairs, here, tonight, now. We followed him, not because he forced us, because there was nowhere else to go that didn't look worse. If I walked away, it would look like guilt. If Daniel refused, it would look like he had something to hide. So we stepped into the elevator. The three of us. Ethan pressed the button for the 9th floor. The doors slid shut. The little box filled with silence so tight, it felt like pressure on my ears. Daniel stood on my right, hands in his pockets, shoulders tense. I could feel how badly he wanted to speak, and how afraid he was of saying the wrong thing. Ethan stood in front of us, facing the doors, jaw set. I tried to steady my breathing. My mind raced through possible scripts. I could say, "You're overreacting, nothing happened." I could say, "I was going to tell you." I could say, "If you trusted me, we wouldn't be here." None of those felt strong enough anymore. The elevator dinged as it passed each floor. On the 5th floor, Daniel finally spoke. "Ethan," he said carefully, "I'm really sorry if this looks bad. I didn't know you hadn't talked about—" Ethan didn't turn around. "I don't need your apology first," he said. "You're not the one who promised me anything." The words hit me like a slap that never touched my skin. The elevator dinged again. We reached the 9th floor. The doors opened. Ethan stepped out first, still carrying the suitcase. He walked down the hallway like a man who had already decided where this was going to end. We followed. I felt like a child being taken to the principal's office. Except this time, I was the adult who had created the situation. Room 9117. The door opened with a small click. Inside, the room was neat and impersonal. White bedding, neutral walls, a desk, a chair nobody ever sat in. The suitcase looked almost too personal when Ethan wheeled it inside and set it near the wall. He took the keycard out of the slot so the lights dimmed slightly. Then he turned to face us. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the 2 chairs near the small table. Daniel sat down immediately. I stayed standing. "I'm not going to sit like I'm on trial," I said. Ethan tilted his head. "You are not on trial," he said. "A trial suggests I don't know what happened." "I do." My heart hammered. "You followed me," I accused. "I watched," he corrected. "There's a difference." He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen a few times, then placed it on the table between us with the screen facing up. The Find My app was open. My name, my phone, a little green dot, showing a line. From our apartment to the restaurant, then here. "I thought you trusted me," I said, heat rising to my face. "I did," he replied, "which is why I never checked this before. Tonight, when you insisted on being vague, I opened it." "That's spying," I protested. "That's reality," he said. "You turned honesty into a guessing game." I decided to stop guessing. He swiped the screen again. Now there were messages. His messages. To me. Unanswered. "How's dinner? Everything okay? Are you coming home soon?" All in a neat line, all marked as delivered. None marked as seen. I was busy talking, I said, crossing my arms. I didn't live glued to my phone for once. Sorry for that. You saw them, he said. I watched the online dot blink next to your name. You saw them and chose not to respond. I didn't have a comeback for that. I had seen them. I had chosen to slide the screen away. He kept going. And then there is this, he said, pulling a tablet out of his bag. He unlocked it with his fingerprint. It was our shared tablet, the one we used for movies, recipes, simple things. Do you remember, he asked calmly, that your messages sync to this through your cloud account? My stomach dropped. He opened the Messages app. There they were, the deleted thread. Not deleted here. Daniel's name, the first message, the little, I'm in your city for 24 hours. My replies, our plans. He scrolled. I watched as if it were someone else's chat. You deleted it on your phone, Ethan said, probably thinking that made it vanish. It did not. He set the tablet down next to the phone like Exhibit B. Then he looked at Daniel. And you, he said, knew I existed. Daniel swallowed. Yes, he said, she told me she was married. But not that you were my friend, Ethan added. I blinked. Wait, what? I asked. Ethan kept his eyes on Daniel. Tell her, he said. Daniel looked uncomfortable. I didn't realize, he began. Ethan and I met once, years ago, at a mutual friends event. I didn't connect the dots until I saw him here. I thought you married someone else with the same first name. I stared at him. You didn't recognize him, I asked. It was a long time ago, Daniel said quietly, and I only saw one photo of your wedding. It didn't register, I swear. So both of you, Ethan said, decided that not connecting the dots was easier. I felt like the room was shrinking. This is getting ridiculous, I snapped. You're making this sound like some planned conspiracy. We had dinner. That's all. Nothing happened. Ethan looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Nothing? He repeated. Nothing at all. We talked, I said. We remembered old times. We laughed. That's it. And you liked it, he said. Yes, I shot back. I did, because I'm tired of feeling like my life is just work and chores and going to bed early. I wanted one night that felt different. He nodded slowly. That, he said, I can believe. The argument that followed did not sound like the ones from movies, with plates breaking and people screaming. It was worse. It was quiet enough that every word landed. You could have told me, Ethan said. You could have said, Daniel messaged me. He's in town. I'm thinking of meeting him. We could have talked. I'm not a guard. I'm your husband. You would have said no, I replied. So you decided no was not an answer you were willing to hear, he said. So you built a version of the story where you didn't need to ask. I decided I'm an adult and I can have dinner with someone without asking for permission like a child, I snapped. He watched me for a moment. This is not about permission, he said. It's about partnership, about giving me the chance to know the truth and decide how I feel, instead of performing a story for me that you think I will accept. You're acting like I went on some secret trip, I said, throwing my hands up. I was 2 neighborhoods away in a crowded restaurant. If I wanted to hide something real, I would have done a better job. That is supposed to reassure me, he asked, that if you were doing something worse, you would be smarter about it. It means I wasn't doing anything that serious, I insisted. You walked in on me walking into a hotel lobby. That's it. You're filling in the rest. He stepped closer. No, he said softly. I walked in on you, glowing from a night with another man. I watched you ignore my messages while you giggled over old memories. I listened to you talk about our life like it's a cage, and this evening like it's freedom. And then I watched you walk into a hotel with him. His voice didn't rise, but mine did. I am allowed to feel alive once in a while, I replied. You act like our marriage is perfect just because there is no drama, but I feel like I'm slowly turning into furniture. I wanted to remember who I was before I became the person who worries about what brand of cleaner is on sale. So you chose him for that, Ethan said. Not a friend, not a new hobby. Him, the one person you know sits in my past as an unresolved story. The one person you know I would not feel comfortable with. You chose him. He wrote first, I pointed out, like that made me innocent. And you answered, he said. Then you hid it. Then you lied about who you were seeing. That's not fair, I said. I did not lie. I just didn't tell you he was my ex. He laughed once, not with humor. What would you call that? He asked. Creative honesty. You twist everything, I said, feeling tears in my eyes, anger and fear mixing, until I didn't know which was stronger. You hold your calm attitude like a mirror and make me look like the only problem. Maybe if you had made me feel more wanted, I wouldn't even have replied to him. There it was, the real strike, the one I had been holding in reserve. His face changed slightly. So now, he said slowly, the fact that you went out with your ex behind my back is my fault. I didn't say it was your fault, I shot back. I said it wouldn't have happened if I felt different. Do you know how many evenings we sit on the couch with you scrolling on your phone and me wondering if this is it? Do you have any idea how invisible I feel sometimes? I am sorry you feel invisible, he said, but the way you chose to fix that was not by talking to me. It was by walking away and giving your attention to the person I would feel most threatened by, and then telling yourself it was just dinner. I needed a reminder that I could still be interesting, I insisted, that someone looked at me and didn't just see laundry schedules and rent deposits. You needed that, he repeated, so you risked everything we built for a few hours of ego, and now you are asking me to understand. I glared at him through tears. Yes, I said, because if you ever went out with an ex, I would at least hear you out before deciding the worst. He looked at me with such steady disbelief that for a second I hated him for not accepting my story. You get to be the one who bends the rules because you feel bored, he said. If I had done this, you would already have a bag packed for me on the curb. I opened my mouth to deny it. I couldn't, because he was right. While all this was happening, Daniel sat in the chair, shoulders stiff, eyes moving between us like he was watching a match he had no desire to be part of. At one point, I turned to him, desperate for support. Tell him, I said. Tell him we didn't do anything wrong. It was just dinner. Daniel shifted, cleared his throat. Ethan, he started. I didn't know she hadn't told you it was me. I assumed you knew. That's not what she just said, Ethan replied. She said I would have overreacted if she had told me. Daniel looked down. Mia, he said quietly, you did lie. I stared at him. You're supposed to be on my side, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. His eyebrows rose slightly. I'm not supposed to be on anyone's side, he said. I walked into this thinking it was innocent. I'm realizing now it was not. Not because of what we did, but because of what you didn't say. That stung. You were flirting with me all night, I snapped. Now you're acting like you're some saint who got dragged into this. He shook his head. I flirted, yes, he admitted. I thought there was room for that because I thought your marriage was stable enough to handle us having a friendly evening, and because I assumed your husband was fully informed. I was wrong. I apologize, Ethan. He turned fully to face Ethan. I am truly sorry, he said. If I had known she was hiding this, I wouldn't have agreed to meet. The betrayal in that moment felt double. The ex who once made everything chaotic was now taking the ethical position. My husband nodded once. Thank you, he said. You are free to go. My head snapped toward Ethan. What? I demanded. You are not tied to this, he told Daniel. You can leave. You didn't promise me anything. She did. Daniel stood slowly. I think that might be best, he said quietly. Mia, I hope you're okay, but I'm not going to make this worse by staying. Of course you're leaving, I said bitterly. Must be nice to walk out clean. He looked genuinely sorry. I didn't come here to break something that was whole, he said. I truly thought it was fine. I won't add more damage by standing here. He walked to the door. For a moment, I wanted to ask him to stay, just so I wouldn't be alone with what I had done, He left anyway. The door clicked behind him. Now there were two of us in the room. The quiet felt heavier than before. Ethan sat down on the edge of the bed. He looked tired for the first time that night. I stayed standing. "Are you happy now?" I burst out. "You made a scene. You scared him off. You dragged us to some cold hotel room like this is a crime investigation. What did you want? A confession? Fine, I like attention. I enjoyed tonight. Are you satisfied?" "No," he said simply. "I am not satisfied, but I am clear." "Clear about what?" I asked. "About who I'm married to," he said. The sentence was quiet, but it shook me. "What does that mean?" I asked, my voice cracking. "It means," he said, "I am married to someone who uses technical details to convince herself she did nothing wrong. Someone who says, 'We only talked, we only walked, we only laughed,' but leaves out, 'I lied about who I was with. I hid messages. I ignored my husband.'" "I admitted I should have told you," I said. "I said I'm sorry. You act like I planned a whole double life when I just had dinner." "You keep saying just," he said. "Just dinner, just messages, just one night, and then you add, 'It's not like we did anything.'" "Because we didn't," I repeated. He nodded. "Maybe," he said, "maybe your body did not cross any lines you can name, but your mind did, your loyalty did, your honesty did. You enjoyed making me the extra in your evening. You used your old story with him to feel alive, and then expected to walk back into our home like nothing had shifted." I opened my mouth, but he kept going. "I'm not angry that you wanted more excitement," he said. "I am not even angry that you went to see him. I am angry that you made that decision without giving me the truth, then tried to tell yourself the problem is my reaction." "What do you want me to say?" I asked, tears finally spilling over. "That I'm a terrible person. Will that make you feel better?" "No," he replied. "Hearing you call yourself names would do nothing. Watching what you chose already told me who you are when you feel bored." He stood up. He walked over to the small desk and picked something up I had not noticed before. His ring. He had taken it off at some point and placed it there. Now he held it lightly between his fingers. "I booked this room 2 hours ago," he said, "when I saw where you were going with him." I blinked. "You decided all this before you even saw us?" I asked. "I decided to stop waiting at home for you to come back with a half-truth," he said. "I decided that if my wife wanted a night that felt like a story, I would give her an ending too." He put the ring down on the table. The soft sound it made felt louder than the click of the door earlier. "Ethan, please," I said, stepping forward. "We can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can talk. I can promise I will never meet him again. This doesn't have to be the end of everything." He watched me with eyes that looked suddenly very old. "I used to think," he said slowly, "that the worst thing you could do to someone is leave them without warning. Now I think there is something worse." "What?" I whispered. "Leaving them slowly while still living in the same home," he said. "Taking pieces of yourself away bit by bit, giving them to someone else, then coming back to sleep in the same bed and saying everything is fine." "I haven't left you," I protested. He nodded. "Not physically," he said. "But tonight I listened to you talk like a woman who already lives in another version of her life in her head. A version where she is free and wanted and light, and her husband is the person she feels guilty talking about. I am not going to beg you to stay somewhere you are already rewriting." He picked up the room key. He walked over and pressed it into my hand. "You wanted a night out," he said. "Now you have a room too." I stared at the key. "I don't understand," I murmured. "You can stay here," he said. "Think. Breathe. Message whoever you want, if you still think that helps. I am going home." His words landed slowly, like my brain needed extra time to process. "You're leaving me here?" I asked. "You went out without me," he said. "You can stay out without me too." He walked to the suitcase standing near the wall, grabbed the handle and rolled it toward the door. I frowned. "Wait," I said. "Whose suitcase is that?" He looked at me. "Yours," he said. I felt my chest tighten. That's not funny, I said. I didn't say it was, he replied. I packed it before I came here. The room shifted. You packed my things? I asked, every word feeling heavier. A selection, he said. Enough for you to stay somewhere else for a while. Clothes, essentials, a few items I knew you would miss. The rest is still at home. For now. For now, I repeated. I am not making any legal decisions tonight, he said, but I am making a personal one. I will not sleep next to someone who spent the evening pretending she was single and then acts shocked that there are consequences. I wasn't pretending I was single, I protested weakly. He raised an eyebrow. What would you call it then? He asked. Ignoring your husband's messages, while laughing with your ex, walking into a hotel with him, planning to tell me half a story and call it trust. I was going home after this, I said. I wasn't planning to stay here. You still can, he said, nodding at the key in my hand. Just not with me. He walked to the door and opened it. Ethan, I said, stepping toward him, panic surging again. Please, don't walk out like this. He paused in the doorway. You keep saying you didn't cheat, he said quietly. Maybe that's technically true, but you made a choice tonight. You put your feelings above our marriage and then called it just dinner. You can call it whatever helps you sleep. I know what it feels like. He looked at me one last time. I am not angry, he said. I am done. And then he left. The door closed. The sound was soft. It still felt like it echoed. I slept in that hotel room, not because I wanted the bed, because I did not know where else to go with a suitcase I hadn't packed and a key I hadn't asked for. The next morning, I went back to our apartment. His shoes were gone from the hallway. His jackets were missing from the hook. On the table, there was no long letter, just a small note with one line in his handwriting. You went out to feel the way you used to feel with him. I went out to feel the way I deserve to feel without this. That was it. No explanation, no promise, no threat, just that. People keep asking me if I actually cheated. I still want to say no. I still want to hide behind that word, like as long as I didn't cross some visible line, I'm still in the clear. But when I think about Ethan in that lobby, waiting with my suitcase by his side and a room key in his hand, I know the truth. I went out with my ex as friends to prove to myself I still had options. My husband came to the hotel to prove to me he did too.